Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And we have an interesting configuration in the sky right now. This is Venus Day, Venus Hour, so let's call on Aphrodite and Beta Persei, and the midheaven is on Spica, so it is a good time to invite on Spica, Beta Persei, Moon conjunct Chiron on Andromeda, so I'm going to call on Andromeda, basically to bring in the correct, the just, and to reconcile what needs to be reconciled so that we can clearly see what the right appraisal here and justice. Ascendant is ruled by Jupiter, which is in the 7th house. We got a interesting configuration of 3 planets on the 22nd degree. So Venus 22nd degree of to kill and be killed, Mars 22nd degree, Gemini, okay, Venus Virgo, and Moon 22nd degree, Aries, conjuncting Chiron. So that means we are touching on a certain wound, and this is very, very appropriate to discuss issues of murder. So we know that in the process, Andrew Tate is accused of trafficking, also in minors, and just a little bit of the structure of the codes that require for such configuration. That's basically something he's required to do in the code, and this is basically to have people on tape be raped, but also raping, murdering, torturing. So all of the triggers apply for expandable children and so on. We know that Andrew Tate has been accused in the past of human trafficking, drug trafficking, and basically we know that he has been even having sort of a school to teach such methods for people supposedly to make money or to become top G or whatever. We know he has been doing tax evasion as well, and most of these things we know from him. Okay, we also know there has been a play on religion, so he in the past said he might convert to Islam because he will be able to rape, no problem, and nobody can complain. Yes, and so later he converted to Christianity, and he began to work on the creating the dissonance where what you know, in short, this is what the people call the sentence that he said, that sex with women is gay. Okay, so that's a lot of 22 degrees. My first reaction was to begin to watch a YouTube episode of the case for Natalie Holloway, but which I believe involves way more. Has world symbolism, had Nova in it. I would need to see what was Nova more in depth. Case is not completely solved, I believe, to this point. It got into Oprah Winfrey, which is another interesting figure. When somebody threw a glass of wine at the reporter's face. But then it came up to my mind, I need to do Andrew Tate chart. So without further ado, let's take a look at this chart. Whoa, we have the sun here, card the sun, good to call on Regulus. I didn't invite this, it's just, but this is very interesting. I did a Sol Regulus talisman yesterday. And so he was born with Sagittarius sun, 9 degrees. The ascendant just went over, I guess, his sun when I said I need to do this episode. I don't have ascendant. This means we don't have birth time for him. And the sun and the moon, 9 degrees Sag. Okay, conjunct in 11 degrees Saturn. So this is a new moon child. Not eclipse child as it seems. Sun and moon conjunct in Saturn. Saturn on 11th degree. Saturn, 11th degree has to do with electrocution, suicide, electricity in general. So Jupiter that rules this configuration, including Uranus, is also ruling children. And Jupiter is in Pisces, 13 degrees, with Mars, 3 degrees Pisces. So Mars is conjuncting Fomalhaut, actually, but we know that Mars with Fomalhaut can bring slander. Yes, he's Lilith, 21 degrees retrograde Gemini, also sign ruled by children. Mercury, Scorpio, Pluto, Venus conjunction in Scorpio. Okay, Venus 5 degrees Scorpio, 5 degrees a Leo degree. So it's a very prominent Venus. And Pluto gives it extra power in Scorpio. So Venus in Scorpio is basically in detriment. It's opposite to the sign to which it rules. Venus in Scorpio, and especially with Pluto, can bring deep exploration of the dynamics of power in Scorpio, sex, relations, but also marriages. Okay, it is a going to extreme in those relations. Venus, Pluto, Scorpio can be incredibly obsessive, possessive. There is a lot of things to do. Actually, for this chart, I would say there would be a lot of things to do in favor of women in sex trafficking. Unfortunately, that went allegedly and according to the many suspicions the other way around with this person's case. We need to have, again, we need to have the context. Okay, for the context, I don't know what bloodline is Tate. I don't know what does he mean for the secret societies. I do know that he's been in situation where he was boxing, and to death. Okay, so there was death matches that he grew up in. With this configuration, Sun, Moon, Saturn. Saturn is and again with the context, okay, this is not the chart itself, but the context of for what the secret societies do, what they do in the world, and so on. We're talking about kind of a jail experiment, okay, for the jail experiment. And this is important to understand the jail experiment and to understand the children that grow within the jail experiment, and what is required of them to survive, okay? And so that is basically torture, electrocution, rape, and they are both raped and being raped. Saturn is also archaic or patriarchal religion, or traditional religion, okay? In our times it's considered patriarchal, but just traditional religion, and there can be ritual abuse. Saturn, we know that the Luciferians are worshipping it as Satan, and their view of Satan is very radical, and instead of Saturn, we know is Lord of Karma, so it's given the opposite of what they actually worship, but it's not how they worship, and they sacrifice children. Sun Moon can mean that and is also to do with our parents. So it can be that he's in a patrilineage or matrilineage or both of such secret societies where children are born into death camps. So I don't know exactly what is the situation there. Perhaps right now when he's arrested for basically pedophilia, okay, that is putting him in very risky situation in jail as well, hurting women in general, put in risky situation, children, okay, and so perhaps the conditions are ripe for him to be able to speak about these expandable children projects and these death cults, and perhaps more elaborately, because it seems like that he's been extorted to do things that essentially, and I say it with zero judgment, but essentially for the compliance with this is not putting him in the position, in the torture that he's been seeking to escape, and perhaps it's a time to speak about this. because this is causing jail experiment for the girls that he's been hurting, for the women he's been hurting, for the people that participated in the jail experiments that he created with men and women. And we know women that were torturers, okay, so working with him, supposedly. Again, it's all secret societies. And so this perhaps is ripe time for him to speak. Mercury is retrograde now, but we might hear more about the case, because it seems like the entire, and it can also be possible that there is something to do with the extortion. I know that Tate has been trying to go a little bit outside of the cult, or a little bit to explain of what the financial system or something like that. But because he's so wrapped up in being an Epstein, okay, that's what it means. When you traffic women, it's for extortion, okay? It's not about people like to rape women, okay? Men, what they are turned on by, if a woman a little bit enjoys it, they are already, how do I hold it, okay? But it's basically a lot of energy invested in manufacturing what people call monsters, so that they will enjoy a torture, because that's kind of outlet for the torture they've been through or whatnot. And that is something's been very highly calibrated on. We see that sexuality, that's, pleasure-based sexuality, or even LGBTQ, that is not connected to going through 1,000 surgeries all your life, is being kind of pushed to the background. And the only LGBTQ that would come out there is somebody that can groom children to death camps, because they're trying to create for some sort of hermaphrodite. You want to hear Mama versus Mafia on this, and you want to keep in mind that there's place for LGBTQ, there's place for women, there's place for men, there's place for good sex, in marriage, outside of marriage, all of these things good. But the topics, every time we do something for women, then it's being washed, okay, or for LGBTQ, it's being washed in those ways. And because Tate was exposed to this in secret societies, very likely, then I don't know what his story or how he got into these things, but it's very likely that he's been so deeply a part of extortion that he was exposed to the bigger plan. And for everybody, it's different. If I go for, let's say, a completely other figure that did not do sex trafficking with children, is Ronald Bernard. And he was a banker, okay, but is considered top criminal for what he had to do. And you want to listen to Ronald Bernard. And for him, because he was assaulted as a child, the children was red line, but he had to be tortured and must not say names of anybody. We know, yes, in general, in Netherlands, Rabobank is one of the biggest banks where such extortions are managed through. For the case of Joris Demming, Hansa Medma, that testifies, okay, this is all, yes, allegedly, but I believe Hansa Medma, yes, which is fair to say. And from those to even Peter de Vries defending Joris Demming, but yes, I talk in other instances about the attempt to actually tend to Supreme Court judges putting drug cartel lords for pedophilia in jail. The case of Hussein Baby Sin, and he was a client of Judge Joris Demming. So yes, we understand what Peter was up against, and you want to watch Peter Cheort, the Purmerend murders, for have more context. And so into these questions, what about Tate? It's very likely that when he ran into the mass enslavement of humanity, the fact that he absolutely is not going to have power in this global society, then whatever, I don't know how he began with that, but whatever was the case, there were attempts to talk about, what the real estate cartels, the financial system, they can lock you out of banking. And he's been seeing it from, very simply put, the human trafficking perspective. But this is also important to understand that this jail experiment that they're doing with people, they're just doing that with people. I'm third generation to Holocaust survivor, and we know that regardless of how or why Holocaust happened, what was happening, and not only in Germany, was big jail experiments, and people had to do things as much as state to even survive in many instances or many cases, not just the capos. They were doing all kinds of things with the inmates, and is the reason my grandfather only spoke once, and I was not even alive when he spoke about this, and not more. Okay, is the reason, and as Viktor Frankl said, all the good ones, they died. So we understand that we are meeting a person who has been through perpetual Holocaust and had to be perpetuating perpetual Holocaust in this situation. And so as much as it's tempting to say, oh, we cut the head of the pyramid, he's not the head of the pyramid. And this is important to understand, okay? So, and then for the question is, do we perpetuate the jail experiment or not? And so, yes, okay. So let's take a look at aspects. There is a lot of protection for Tate here. There's a sextile between his Venus and Pluto, Neptune, Venus in Scorpio, Neptune in Capricorn, which is ruled by this 11th degree Saturn. It's a bit challenging here, and Mars in Pisces. So the protection is so much so that he was not dying from this experiment. I don't know if that's how we would prefer it, but it's just the result that he did not die. And so Saturn, that pretty much was the head of the pyramid here, is in Jupiter's sign. Jupiter is at home sign. So through maneuvering from religion, okay, will I convert to Islam? Will I convert to Christianity? Will I make people believe that this woman is okay, that woman is okay to rape? All of these things were things that he had to do so to survive, to keep doing of what he's doing. But essentially it had to kind of break down. And so, yes, for these situations, he was still under a lot of guardianship, even in this horrid situation. The bisextile is very, very protective, okay? We see here a trine between Venus and Mars, okay? Venus, Mars, Pluto, Mars. So we see a person that essentially has good potential for balance of feminine, masculine. And I think he may have been targeted for this reason, this attempt to ruin this good polarity. It's not the first time I see it. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, Elon Musk, who is kind of a breeder for the cult, also has this, other people also has good relations between Venus and Mars. And so, again, I lean on a Trudy Mama versus Mafia paradigm for understanding. I know that David Icke is talking about this a lot because she has been so exposed from the inner and from Rabobank to this, then I take it to the direct source. I know about her through David Icke, okay? And so basically, and I know about David Icke through Elon Musk Putin X platform, which you can have both what we call controlled opposition, and I know about yes, all these things, and I will talk about Brussels in a minute. And this is something to look at Brussels was something I got actually from Geert Wilders, from another context, and this might all be serving in what also Andrew Tate is going through right now. So we tend to judge a person to say, this is such and such person, this is such and such person. You want to watch can astrology be used for profiling? And I'm Israeli, okay? So I'm half Dutch, half Israeli. Its profiling has been practiced in my country. Only now, I discovered that as of this week, security in Beersheba city is going to have another jail experiment, because the police is going to have way more force than it used to have, and it can arrest people in public places and do search on them. And of course, you understand that to create such problem, you need to communicate with, let's say, scary Arabs. So you bring scary Arabs, you make them do a lot of crime, and then you have police enforcement, because people are already asking for the police enforcement. This is something that's happening in the world in general. This is something that the refugee crisis has been used for thoroughly. And again, I don't know what is the position of Andrew Tate. I know that Tristan Tate was having conversations with Forum for Democracy, and this is it was architecture and business, and so it was very interesting to see Forum for Democracy, which was founded by Thierry Boudard, and albeit the French names, Dutch, and he had to resign following something. But Thierry Boudard did talk about the financing of, let's say, the war in Ukraine, which, as Israeli, I've been exposed to by a news story that we have a person that died who was involved with operation in Ukraine. And I'm like, what operations in Ukraine? So I guess some involvement of Israel in the Ukraine war as well, that, of course, as Israelis were not exposed to. And these fundings are bringing in influx of refugees, and this influx of refugees is giving reasoning for police enforcement. Okay, we know that, yes, unfortunately, yes, I have to be true. You know that the name Peter de Vries is here quite a lot, and quite respectfully. He had a party where he talked about justice and progress, not to fight drugs, but to fight crime. And we know that he has been defending Joris de Mink. So yes, it's very difficult to make justice in this way, but we also, again, go back to Patrick Ort. So what is Andrew Tate's, and he and Tristan have been accused of trafficking of pedo rings, allegedly pedo rings. Now let's talk a little bit about Brussels, because we cannot understand Andrew Tate's situation before we understand Brussels. In 1996, we have a person named Marc Detroit. Supposedly, people find children raped, murdered, died, locked in his place. I don't know how he could afford rent for all that. Yes, it was probably not him himself. And we have a total amnesia of the entire juristic system. Was it him? Was it not him? What is this? What is that? How could such person do such thing alone? And if you look at Trudy Martman versus Mafia, one of her recent videos, and she has a beautiful picture of young Mark Rutte, who's today head of NATO, is ex-prime minister of stop the smiles here, energy. Stop the smiles. Everybody's involved with that. But he's been prime minister of Netherlands during 7 October. Benjamin Netanyahu called Rutte, Mark Rutte. And this is important to remember, because, you know, the prominent PVV and its Geert Wilders leader have not been prime minister at the time. So before basically our own Israeli prime minister wants to announce, hey, we are in a war, he calls Mark Rutte. Why? We don't know. So the role that Marc Detroit filled was to extort for all these politicians. So when we want to get rid of Mark Rutte, when we want to get rid of this, of that, we show here, snuff video, he did so and so, he did so. Now the movies are so horrible that sometimes you don't even need to show the movies, okay? And okay, so this makes everybody that wants to get to look into this case go through big trauma. And yes, this is also something you have to take into account. And so Marc Detroit has been offed. In 1996, there was the White March, and quite around the time there was a foundation of Taliban in Afghanistan. And you know that to get to the United States after 9/11 is very difficult. This is Shirley, it was before 9/11. בסדר. Bisha said what I said. So Brussels is willing to take all the refugees. Bring them all. Creating influx of, it's not influx of refugees or even work immigrants. It is influx of war, torture, jail experiments to create such situation that people would, if you listen to Tamina Akafi, when she talks about Kabul, okay, and she's Afghani woman, Afghani author and journalist, and when she talks about Kabul, she says, we were well off. We were well off. It was a rather secular city. If you see Iran before 1979, they were well off, okay? But you have to create a little bit of a big crisis there and make all those extremists in society, give them ammunition, give them weapons, give them this, give them that. So people would do everything to run away, sell all of this, a lot of money changing hands, a lot of banking going on. And they would reach Netherlands, so that they would have to do sex trafficking, or they would have to be trafficked, they would have to do crime. They would have to shut up about a lot of things. And I want to tell you, when I was in between houses, only this week I found out, when I looked at the babysitting case again, the company that was willing to represent me was, of course, a company that was in favor of making hard drugs legal. And indeed, I'm supportive of people who try to get out of addiction, to have housing, to have access. It's addiction, in essence, is lack of connection, lack of validation, lack of community. Mate Gabor, I think, is leading voice regarding that. I don't agree with everything that comes out of his mouth, but he's leading voice regarding that. And so actually for who would be funding that, naturally people have interest in the drug cartels. And so one of the biggest drug cartels client was Baby Sin, and for the judge that assisted him until he put him in jail was Joris Deming. So basically, in a way, I was represented by proxy Joris Deming. And I would either have housing and shut up, okay? Or I would not have housing first, housing, not real estate, a home, a place to be. The very basic. Alternatively, they can kidnap you to be in those snuff movies. Now, what is Andrew Tate doing? Remember Marc Detroit, the whatever, the that, allegedly, with his brother, who is in the Forum for Democracy. And I don't know what Thierry Boudet will say about Forum for Democracy. He's still exiting them, retweeting, okay? Because if I say exiting, nobody understands what I talk about. He's still retweeting their ex-posts. All the while, you know, yes, David Icke is right. He talks about the funding, but we also, yes, have to be reintroduced to the fact that Forum for Democracy had interviewed Tristan Tate, and you know that, and we also have Van Meijeren in Forum for Democracy in Netherlands, who was against satanic ritual abuse, and one of the voices who may or may not be a clone of some other person. So cloning people and trying to create for reduce sexual polarity And I would not be surprised if Andrew Tate is chosen here for this good Venus Mars, although Venus is not in good sign and Mars is also not in place in Pisces, the aspect between them is good aspect and is also supported by Neptune. So this person could be great artist, poet, creative person, but also he could do great banking, financial systems, teaching, okay, for the many things that he could do. And they try to take for such person and then see how do we create hermaphrodite, how do we put it when they put to torture, through this, through that. So basically to cancel the sexual polarity within Tate himself, and for him to be an agent in canceling sexual polarity, because people are either so triggered from having sex, or their sex is only for extortion. And then there is classes and divisions of people. These people you can rape, these people you can this, these people you can that. And because elite are doing this to their own, okay, according to bloodline, and that's again another paradigm that you need to understand. You want to listen to Imagination podcast, you want to listen to Anneke Lucas, to understand what is people that go within the cult are going through in those situations. And so, and that is a lineage issue, okay, for lineage issue. Yes, if your father was supporting a Supreme Court judge and had to do tax evasion, and now you are receiving the inheritance of that, okay, that is going through the generations and degenerating entire humanity. And this is also the underneathness of the colonialist enterprise. We say, oh, there was colonialism, there was influx of population, we needed to feed them. Worse off, there was decline of population, we needed to, fuck people from other races to keep breeding. Okay? That was the issue. And Andrew Tate here is being put in position where you cannot have a lot of empathy for this man. He is basically perpetuating continuous holocausts in teenage girls, in women, and he was the guy that nobody would like because he survived the death camps. It means he had to torture, maybe he had to rape men as well, boys as well, as a child, as a youngster, or he would be dead. And he talks about the boxing and the death matches, but who knows what is else to be said here. And another thing is important to understand for the creation of hermaphrodite, and this is something I learned from David Icke. I was listening to a David Icke interview, and he talks about the fact that before they targeted the feminine, okay, the women, which is anything feminine, and it's important to understand this as feminine, yin and yang. You say, this is sexist, this is this is that. Wait, listen what they believe in. Okay, listen to what they believe in. They try to say, let's take yin and off it, off XX. Okay, so let's take yin and off it, because they want to interfere with the genome so that they would control for the breeding, make another type of human, the transhumanism, so it can be controlled. It won't be controlled, but this is what they try to do. Okay, and that's the Ubermensch project. And so what is yin? It's not what is feminine. What is yin? Okay, what is yin is the dark skin of the coffee. It's the dark skin of the coffee of the people that have this beautiful skin. It's it's women. It's anything childish. It's those that lose the war because they considered less aggressive. Okay, this is all coming from tribes. This is all coming from tribes. It's not coming from patriarchy, the Vatican, and this modernly the Vatican is holding a lot of power, but now it's diminished. And if the tribes still believe those things, okay, that if you have somebody persecuting you, you're going to cannibalize on them, but the one that loses the war, they're the losers, they're the feminine, okay, whereas, no, if you didn't have feminine, you wouldn't have power to go to war. But if we want to cancel one or the other, then you go through one and you diminish that and you create an influx of the other, then you go to the other. So basically for what they did, and this is what the table flipped, because I knew it from the feminine, but I knew it from the feminine from men. But Ike says before they did it to feminine, they did it to masculine. They said they targeted the masculine, toxic masculinity. Okay. Now here's the thing. Of course, there is bad behavior of what we call men. Okay, and of course this is wrong. And then they branded it toxic masculinity, and under the name of toxic masculinity, for what they did is to try to eliminate the man's ability to say yes, no, and maybe. Which actually, how does women and boys and girls and women and men heal from sexual violence? Is basically connecting to the root, the lower chakras, and beginning to say yes, no, maybe, according to what you see fit. And you want to listen to Tom Jacobs, who was given free meditations of these things to help you to go back to your energy and to begin to say yes, no, maybe. To say, and then solar, I alone define myself. This is all Tom Jacobs affirmations. I alone define who I am. Sovereignty. Okay? And those things are at the heart of the endeavors of these secret societies, is to enslave humanity, which basically hurts them. Holistically, it hurts them, to try to control and to make certain superhuman, which will have the qualities that they determine. Now, they don't think that they would lose this game because they have been playing it for millennia, and it is our lack of exposure to all these things that has been a part of perpetuating that. And the colonialism, what it did, it created disconnection between what the tribes were, and for the identity of people as tribal society. Okay, if you speak with actual people that were in these tribes, they say, no, we cannibalized on our enemies. We murdered the daughters. What is Sedna's story? Sedna wanted not to marry, to have childhood, and then to be a free woman. And to be free, even if relationship, maybe men from other tribe, where she can have relationship but be free. Then wasn't working. Her father was concerned that nobody will accommodate for her in the entire tribe. So he sold her to this man. And then he tries to rescue her, but he doesn't know what to do. And then he's attacked, and he's cutting off the hands, the fingers of his daughter. She drowns in the ocean, and then you have to pray for Satan to have food. And this is true. It is still true till today. I'm Israeli, I see. Both the 7th October happened because we didn't listen to the women watchers. We didn't listen to the veterans. We didn't listen to the people we deemed as crazy. We didn't accommodate. We didn't listen to the children that reported that they've been kidnapped. Or we call the welfare. The welfare is the kidnapper. And then, of course, 7th October and another for the 1400 in one day, poof, in torture, in rape, in horrid things, abducted people, okay? Same things. Advanced Western society. Not at all. And here, going back to this issue of what they try to do with people like Tate, is to perpetuate for these traumas around survival. Basically to perpetuate Holocaust, but they put him through Holocaust and keep him there. And then he does that to others, because that's what he's supposed to do. And he has his brother inside. So let's say he would want to get out. He has a brother, the twin brother. What would his brother do? Okay, so now him and his brother trafficking children. Now this is interesting because for Epstein, one person. Marc Dutroux, one person. Tristan and Tate, two people. They're trying to make it Even worse, because of these brothers. Let's say you want to go away. You have family. You have bloodline. They have to both together go out. And how? What empathy do you have for a person that raped, tortured since childhood? Essentially, now he's been, yes, in jail for the pedophilia. Why? Because so we don't continue to talk about MK Ultra, don't continue to talk about this now. Of course, he's not like a person that can go right now free and so on and so forth, and he will not hurt people. And no, in this situation, there has to be some place where it's safe from him hurting people, of course. But it's also important to understand the politics of why this is exposed now, that is exposed now. He has around 19 degrees Aries, so this is fated. This is happening around the eclipses. He's the replacement, and you know, with all the things that now actually refugees are being deported. We already have cases of children being deported. Yes, I'm not going to put a spotlight at people that try to help for these children. It's probably more intricate than that, because if I say one good thing, then many other things can say, well, but they were involved with that. I'm like, okay, I don't know. and then they would take another person as, you know, but they replace the head so quickly that it wouldn't even save children if they are hurting, I don't know. And so these are the considerations. Okay? And so 19 degrees Aries Rahu, this means that Tate had, and his brother had Rahu return. Rahu return, this means completely change of phase. Completely change of phase. And this Rahu is ruled by Mars in Pisces next to Fomalhaut. Okay? So this is, of course, still related to the Aries solar eclipse, so 19 degrees Aries. That's the eclipse that got us the PVV Netherlands. That's the eclipse that got the deportation. And then what do you do with Tristan and Tate and Andrew Tate? Okay, you don't need them anymore. You need to replace the heads, because now people are talking about 1996. People are talking about the White March. People are beginning to make connections, because when there is a Moroccan child, a woman, okay, a Moroccan woman, or Afghani woman, or this, now they need to be deported to the same countries, or Ukrainian people now to be deported to the same countries. That created all this mess. It's not that Ukraine was good for the Ukrainian people. They ran away from a reason, not just because of the war. It's the democide. It's the democide that they ran away from. Okay? And Thierry Baudet has been off his own party because he talks about the fact that Netherlands funds who? Because if Israeli combatants had operations in Ukraine, who funds who? And the Prime Minister calls Mark Rutte, that's now head of NATO for you, and there's mandatory service going to be in all of Europe with this Mark Rutte, survivor of satanic ritual abuse himself, as all the leaders, right and left, also Wilders. And they had to perpetuate this. I know from testimonial through Mama versus Mafia and through David Icke. So you need to replace. This is why they replaced for Epstein before that bloody war. Now, when they're calling for to basically put these refugees in a no-go situation, okay, they don't really have a place to go. But why they created the influx of refugees, okay, Wilders cannot tell you that because he cannot talk about what we now know through the roundabout, okay? But he says Brussels, Brussels, Brussels. What happened in Brussels 1996, at around the time that Wilders wrote his book about Islam and so on? It's those pedo rings. There's a leak in the pedo rings, and then you have a world war. And now all the right wing is coming in Europe to deport the refugees. Basically, they have no place to go. And it's not safe for them. I ran into a situation where I see articles in the Telegraph. Yes, it's Telegraph. It's Dutch is funny language. And you see articles of people basically children. They say, I have no place to go in Morocco and here and that. But I think to myself, if they stay in Netherlands, they could end up in a snuff film. And Wilders knows that. And Forum for Democracy had to host for 2 human traffickers to change a public agenda around gender. But what they try to do is to somehow preserve the sexual polarity. Because you know what happened when we try to break sexual polarity, okay? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why? Because after, let's say, Chernobyl crisis is the recent that we had. After Chernobyl crisis, what happened in nature? More sexual polarity. Extinct animals came back to life, came back to spread, came back to no longer risk of extinct, and they began to procreate with sexual polarity. The Jews have a saying, they say, okay, it's the more that you torture them, the more they multiply and the more that they expand. But this is wisdom, okay? Because they've been the subject of this for many centuries. And so now, for the people that try to attempt to preserve sexual polarity, how can you market that to a market of opinions where people are starving for recognition for the non-binary identity? Because all of our identities are non-binary. We have the polarity within ourselves. It's how we are able to connect with the other person, with the other side of the polarity, and we exchange polarities, and that's how we have sex. That's how we have orgasms, how we have children. Okay, it's natural. And this works on levels of creation, not just physical children, or creation of projects, creation of this, creation of that. It just works, okay? Even among 2 men or 2 women, it just works. And it's very difficult to explain for this, because we know that in mass media, especially meme-based media, and now we're going to have Uranus and Gemini, it's going to make it even worse, it's very difficult to bring in an intricate topic of conversation in a meme. And people don't have conversations anymore because the soil is still polluted from the last time we tried to do the Uber mentions, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And you still brush your teeth with the fluoride. Some people don't. But your organic food's still toxic. and what they call meat is no longer no longer meat. Okay, although it's less cruel sometimes to make the meat from the animals if they get a place to be, to stay, to walk around, to roam around. Okay, not like crushed up like they are in industrial supposedly revolution. But you are also less hungry when you eat the correct food and you're not so much in stress. You see how for this industrialist society, this and I have to say, capital-based society is also Marxist society. And that's really important, because in Marxist society, everything is okay as long as you work. You have to pinch your cheekbones to go into the death camp to say, no, I can still work. Don't kill me yet. That's Marxism. That's Marxism. Why is Chinese labor so cheap relative to what used to be American labor? Now they're having these death camps. But that was the weird idea of Trump. But they're having, not just Trump, but they're having these death camps in Oregon for the homeless. And they convince you for the value of work, hard work. If you don't rest enough, you will not be efficient when you work hard. That pertains to the sexual polarity, okay? That's how we make a living, make a life or making a living. Because if you just call making a living, you don't make a life, and then you cannot make a life literally because your fertility is gone, your sperm count is down. And I've been talking about sperm count for Saturn in Pisces, but David Icke's been seeing that since the 90s as well. And in all that, you have a person whose sexual polarity is okay. The Pluto-Venus extremes thingy can absolutely go to a person if he would get right education to assist for people who are in sex trafficking, assist for people who are in compromised situations for the sexuality, assist for people who are in financial violence. He could do all that. Assist to have assisted death, okay, with the Saturn. Assisted death, promote assisted death, change for the opinions we have of people that do commit suicide. Many good things. And Uranus Sag, okay, some revolution, but this can be radical revolution about the radical worldview that he can have with this. And he would be protected. Doing that, he would be protected. That being said, we must understand that the cults and the secret societies, Kenny has here Lilith opposing Uranus, which is interesting configuration, is yes, but not contributing, okay, to the situation, let's say. But now is fated. What we see, the events we see right now is fated. It's a part of all the junk going out. So we talk about things, and it is because the deportations happen that we talk about Brussels, and we talk about because in Brussels is basically the UN. It's basically, I'm sorry, the EU. I don't know if it's the EU, and the entire EU. Okay, so Brussels tells to which country you're going to have this and that refugee influx, this and that refugee influx. Okay, and everyone's at it. And then you have the right wing that's supposed to oppose them, and everybody has, yes. But why was Rutte not for this? Because Rutte did not want to have refugees out of the countries. But then we will talk about the Trois again, and there's some funny pictures of him in a comrade over there. And those are the Supreme Courts, the leaders of, Netherlands, of Brussels, of France, our finest European gentlemen and gentlewomen. All there. Who extorts them? The Rabobank. In Netherlands, the Rabobank. Okay? If we believe Trudy, and I believe Trudy, she was PFDA, married to a founder, CEO of Rabobank, not founder CEO, sorry, of a branch of Rabobank, I don't know. And she saw for the rituals that they are doing. And satanic ritual abuse. By the way, a bank that owns BlackRock, I think, is Bank of America. Remember, 19th of November. So Pluto ingress to Aquarius for good. So in these situations now, you don't have one Marc de Troyes, you have two Epsteins. It's very difficult to raise empathy for people who are raped the souls and bodies and murdered the souls and bodies of people en masse. And it's also very tempting to think, oh, we got justice done. Triste and Tate are in jail, going to be in jail. But as a person who tends to expandable children, I wouldn't know what I know if I didn't listen to people like Anneke Lucas, to people like Ronald Bernard, to people like all the many testimonials of Imagination podcast. Yes, these things that I understand, that it's not enough to switch the heads. You switch the heads. Actually, one of the reasons that I've been turning to certain such public figures, because I know they are going to, for those who practice expandable children, they practice expandable people and expandable leaders and business people and whatnot. If it's one world government, there's only so much people that they need. And every 100 years or so they die. This is why, okay, we had Kissinger dead, we had the elite of the banking system dead. Okay, that these two, they get to 100, they get to 80, they get to 90, okay, then they are frozen, dead or alive. And you got Schrödinger cats working. It's an experiment, it's a human experiment. And that is you have to disentangle. You know, I had a bestie that what they liked, if you had a necklace. You know, these things with the soft necklaces, they look so beautiful on the body, but then they get so entangled. I had a bestie that had, we would, they would sit there for hours and they would and they would loved it. It was therapeutic for them to do that. Nobody stands doing that. They would disentangle the necklace. Okay, you need somebody to do that, to disentangle all the traffickers and all the causes to delegate enough. This is the temptation, because people are just off with their heads. But if you don't disentangle, okay, then what happens is that you've just rejuvenated. Okay, if you have a cancerous tumor and you cut it, Hermann Koch, it grows better. But if you actually care for people, and the person, either they need to care for something or they need to be cared for, and both in a good, nourishing way, body begins to kill cancer. And the funding for research is abrupted. But what's happening with Pluto Aquarius, and that's the beauty of it, the funding for the Ubermensch is extinct. Bank of America, by the way, is also, if I'm not mistaken, owning Bitcoin. So for those of you who are looking to decentralize in that way, I may have caused a significant drop in the currency right now. So hopefully you're not too dependent on that. Because people would definitely want to take that and quote it more than they would want to take that and quote, the entire story about Tate. It's how journalism works. So yes, definitely Tate is still in the thrones of this eclipse. The upcoming lunar eclipse not going to be so big for him, nor will the October eclipse. Okay, so I don't see any of those being. Okay, the October eclipse is hitting Venus and Mercury are going to be around his Venus and Mercury. So so the October eclipse is sealing the deal for a lot of things. This is okay for this is an interesting because it's not clear call to action where you can have, you know, off with their heads is a very clear cut call to action, but it's not going to do anything but rejuvenate the very system that enslaves people. They've been doing that for a couple of millennia, so they know. They're not afraid of that. Keeping human traffickers, and it's beyond the question of letting them get away with that, which most of society is stuck it, and rightfully so, which, you know, we don't conceive of such things. And we are kept in situations where we don't conceive of such things, okay? Tending to it is a must. Letting a person like this just, okay, what would they do? Did we build alternative structure? Did we build alternative housing? Did we build alternative soil? Building of soil, okay? When you want to grow food, you need to build soil. Half moons and bay leaf trees can help with that, okay, to purify the water. Inclusivity, okay. There has to be something in the place of what is now, so that when things are crumbling, they're crumbling into the falling into pieces, and the pieces are falling into the right place rather than just perpetuating more evil. And definitely for the people that are the victims of all of this, that were not perpetrators yet, to catch this when they're still the victims and to validate them. You're not to blame for what happened to you. Who makes such monsters? How would such a person become such a monster? Well, they put a lot of energy in bringing them to such a monster, so that can also perhaps alleviate for your suffering, in the sense it's like it's not you did it, it's not your fault. And even so, you can know that very likely for this person, at least at some point in their life, or several points in their life, they sought help. What is help? You don't want to know. More of the same, so that they wouldn't come out of this circle. So you're absolutely not to blame for what happened to you. And you absolutely need a place where you can heal. Not what the doctor says, because they are part of this, of what you say. And you probably need that for independently of your ability to work. Everything that got you into this needs to take space a little from. What got you into this? Everybody has to work. I have to contribute for society, yes, but you also needed to receive. If I grow a tree, I build up soil, and I tend to the water, and then I make structures for make it easier for me to tend to the water, then the tree begins to grow in itself. You who've been through this, whether you perpetuate, whether you're Andrew Tate or his victims, Everything was made so that your soil is poisoned, so that if you begin to grow roots, they will cut off, so you transfer it here, transfer there. So if you begin to grow trunk, it's cut off, so you don't have the right to grow with love. And is that why is these things happening? And in that process, we find points of interferences which we can grow with love. But you're absolutely not to blame for what happened to you, for having feelings, for having lost the battle, for having said no and that no not respected, or for not having said no because you were taught that saying no is toxic masculinity and saying yes is toxic femininity. And you don't want to sit on the fence. That's the worst of the worst. You've been put in 22 catches all your life. Of course, these are the outcomes. And for the people that put people in 22 catches all their lives, that what they were perpetuating what was done to them. So the first root is to understand you're not to blame, and you have right to be, and to begin to create this this space of being, to set intention for to create a space of being within you and to expand it, is what I would say here. Will Tate and Tristan go to jail, actually serve time? I don't know. But this is where, for those of us, we call on Andromeda, we call on Spica, those of us who want to see justice done, grow forest, not hatred, is what I have to say. Because all of these, the desire to see justice done is being manipulated so that you will perceive an image of justice from your own perspective that would put you in difficulty where you can't make decisions and you can't rest and you can't work. And then they say, you're free, Mason. You're free, you're not slave, you're free. You're master. I want to expose something. I'm not going to say names, but you know that I speak with people alive and I speak with people not alive. And there was something that I've been wondering of people that had demonstrated great sense of desire to do justice, great empathy, real empathy. I knew about the programming, about everything, and tortured people at the same time, or defended or enabled, okay? And I received, right before I went to bed, I received some people have believed that for the soul, you have to be the best of the best and the worst of the worst at the same life, so you will not incarnate here again. You understand that the person that have that deep desire to never ever but never ever come back here again, and ends up being a frozen body because people want to prove it. Okay, but you understand that a lot of torture is being put to such people so that they will not ever come here again. And that's what they're trying to do to you. And with that, I'll end.